Right, my name's Lesley Young. I'm 65 years old. I live in Alnwick, Northumberland.
Could you please describe social life in the 80s?
Social life in the 80s. My social life was probably spent predominantly in pubs. When I say I spent time in pubs, I used to spend time in pubs which were usually music venues. Spent a lot of time watching live music, both amateur and professional. Mainly American music, but right across the board. It could be rock, country, soul, R&B, blues, whatever, but mainly American.
In the 80s?
Probably the same as what it was in the 70s. I was listening to outfits from America, particularly bands like Little Feat, The Meters, Lowell George, Doobie Brothers, Joe Walsh. I could go on and on and on, I suppose. And I used to go and see as many of these outfits as I could. If they were touring in this country. I've seen some very, very good stuff in Newcastle at the City Hall. I've seen Ry Cooder, Little Feat. I've seen Bruce Springsteen before he was the stadium act that he is now. Captain Beefheart, who I met on that occasion. Mainly American stuff.
Could you just give us a brief description of the fashion trends in the 80s?
Oh, let me see. In the 80s. I don't know. As I said, you had that. You had the remnants of the punk movement. So you had their look, which is all nuts and bolts and safety pins and all the rest of it. And then you had that new romantic lot, with slightly bizarre hairstyles, and leggings and this is, in my opinion, bizarre stuff like that. Okay. I was always fond of gangster movies. Okay. Once Upon a Time in America, that was an epic thing. Scarface. Some war movies. Full Metal Jacket, that was really good. I'm not sure if Lonesome Dove was done during the 80s. I think it possibly was, but that was a Western. I really enjoyed that as well.
Whereabouts did you live in the 80s, and could you describe your community?
It was a large private housing estate, very close to the beach in Blythe. It was called South Beach Estate, and it was semi-detached, 3-bedroom, gardens back and front, just the same as all the other houses on the estate.
Who did you live there with?
I lived there for a short while with my first wife, and then for a little while on my own.
Would you describe your community as a safe place to live?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Did you get on with most of your neighbours?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got on with most of them, yeah.
Were there any interesting figures?
Not really. I have to be absolutely honest, no.
Just boring people with fun?
Yeah. I was the odd one out. Well, I got on with most folks, but then again, I didn't particularly know everybody in the street, if you like. I knew one or two, and that would be about it. And it would be, hello, good morning, and that's about it.
What was there to do in Blythe in the 80s?
Well, it depended what you wanted, I suppose. I mean, there was a sports centre there if you were inclined that way, okay. And of course, there was a whole lot more in the way of pubs in as well, you know, pubs and clubs, you know. The clubs have since subsequently nosedived in popularity. So I suppose, you know, there was enough to do, if you like. I lived in a 3-bedroom semi-detached house on a housing estate, which was called South Beach Estate. Initially, with my first wife, and then on my own for a while. I was a rigger at Blythe Power Station. I had been a rigger contracting prior to that. Yeah, I always enjoyed the job, rigging. I had been a rigger on contract work at the power stations. I subsequently became employed by CEGB. As I said, I was a rigger. The riggers handled the movement and manipulation of large pieces of machinery safely with accessories such as cranes and lifting equipment. Yes, I was. I was a member of it would be called then AEU construction section, Amalgamated Engineering.
What were the benefits and what were the drawbacks?
Benefits, well, the drawbacks was having to pay fees. The drawbacks would, the benefits would be if you were injured at work, you know, they would fight for you legally, you know. They would get legal advice for you and they would take you through the courts if necessary, you know. If you had disputes in the workplace, your union representative should and would sort it out for you. Well, we're seeing the miners' strike every day as we were going to work and coming away from work at the power station, because you would have picket lines at the gates, you know, which was not a good situation because you actually knew the people who were on the picket lines, you know, but it was their dispute and not ours, you know. So in as much as you sympathised, you still had to go to work.
Did you know anybody specifically who was involved in the miners' strikes?
Yes, yeah. I knew folks who were involved in it. I had a cousin who was involved in it, you know.
Would you say it drove a big line through a community?
It could drive a wedge through a family. You know, it was absolutely instrumental in destroying communities, as has been proved. My thoughts on Margaret Thatcher aren't very complimentary. She was absolutely instrumental in totally destroying British industry, coal, steel, shipbuilding. You can go on and on. She did not appreciate them at all. She was hell-bent on destroying the miners' union. Hell-bent on it. That's been proved.
Could you elaborate on whether you felt sympathy for the miners?
Oh, of course I felt sympathy for them. You know, they suffered badly. Real badly. You know, and you had lads who returned to work before the end of the strike. And you can understand why. It was survival, you know. It was a dreadful thing to witness. Well, you were watching it'd be on the news every night, the picket lines, you know, miners being hit over the head with police truncheons, actually charging them on horseback, you know. No, not good. Not good at all.
Can you talk to us about the thing about Orgrave that you were just talking to us about before?
Well, I subsequently heard that the mounted police charges at Orgrave, as was portrayed on the news, it had been engineered to look like the miners had initiated that conflict, in that it started throwing missiles at the police, and then they charged the picket lines, when in actual fact the BBC were instructed to reverse the footage. I don't think he handled it well. I think if he took the miners to ballot, it could have had a different outcome. It's possible.
Right.
But maybe not, because Thatcher was hell bent on destroying the industry.
Ask about anything about that.
Oh yeah. What was your opinion on Margaret Thatcher claiming that the miners were the enemy within?
It's ludicrous statement. Not the enemy within at all. They weren't the enemy. They were just working lads. Working lads want a decent wage, you know. And if anybody thinks that they weren't worth their money, well, they've never been down the pit. Try it. See if it's easy. Unfortunately, they can't these days because there isn't any pits left. Well, obviously, people benefited from the right to buy scheme. But since then, you know, council housing, it's disappearing. It's all private landlords now. You know, there's no council houses anymore, and there should be. There is a place for them. You know, I think it was down to Thatcher. She didn't want council houses, right? She would rather have private landlords in there, because it's all down to that.
So would you then say that Margaret Thatcher is responsible for the impacts that are currently, I've worded that wrong there.
No, but you're on the right track.
So would you say the effects of Margaret Thatcher can still be felt today then?
Absolutely. Of course they're felt today. Definitely. We have no mining industry. We've got no shipbuilding industry. Steel's gone. Okay. Sold off, that's always where sell off all the stuff that actually belongs to the nation, if you like. Okay. Into private enterprise. Okay. I mean, look at the railways, an absolute joke. They've milked it dry ever since it's been privatised. We're paying the highest prices, apparently, or supposedly, in Europe for rail travel on absolute antique rolling stock, scruffy, dirty trains, falling to bits. Nothing runs on time. And I know that for a fact, because I've travelled on them a lot, back and forwards up to Aberdeen. Dreadful. It's third world travel.
Fantastic. Go on, Cal.
I'm trying to find, something.
Everything again is absolute gold.
Yeah.
That's just you're fantastic. The stuff again is brilliant. So what was your memories of the closing the shipyards and the end of the steel up here?
Well, it didn't so much see, we had steel at Concert. I can't remember at which point that one closed. Steel at Teesside was sold off to Tata, Indian outfit, who promptly run it to the ground and milked the pension system. So that's gone. That's gone. The shipyards could have been saved, made the finest ships in the world on the Tyne and on the Weir. The finest ships in the world. They're not there anymore. For me, I felt like the 80s, I was just kind of, I was kind of standing still, if you like. I wasn't getting anywhere. I'm speaking for myself here. I wasn't getting anywhere. It was like just backpedaling, if you like. Okay. Not a particularly happy time for me, the 80s. I have to be honest. Wasn't a particularly happy time for me. You know, for the personal stuff that went on with me, and you know, all the other stuff that goes on around you. So I can't say that it was a great time.